Hello and welcome to My Mom's Basement, presented by 3G and Barstool Sports. I am your host, Robbie Fox. With me is my co-host, Clem, and we are here for the Suicide Squad review, recap, breakdown extravaganza. James Gunn's Suicide Squad is finally out, a movie we've been looking forward to for what feels like years now. I don't know if it was announced years ago, but man, it feels like we've been wanting this movie for a long time. We finally saw it. Both me and Clem went to a movie theater this weekend, and we're here to talk about it.
Many years in the making, Bob, like you said here. Just October 2018 is when James Gunn was announced for it. So I
Wow.
can't believe the last year has been in slow motion. So like, when did the trailers come out? When did the teasers come out? I don't know, but we finally got there in the theaters on HBO Max, a whole bunch of different ways to like view it and stuff like that. So I'm happy we get to finally do this recap. Many years in the making.
Yeah, did you enjoy the movie? I mean, we won't get into spoiler. We're gonna get into spoilers, but just a non-spoilery review. Like, did you like the movie?
So it's interesting. I went into this cautiously stoked about it. I said, I don't know if that's really a thing. If you should be like, if you're stoked, you should be like jumping out of your skin for it. But if you're cautious, you should be kind of like, eh. But I thought it could be like, I'm going in with Guardians level expectations for this heading into it. But I also have been burnt by because the reviews were coming out, the Rotten Tomatoes. I always go back to Last Jedi, where it's like, just because there's a whole bunch of red on the Rotten Tomatoes screen doesn't mean it's all going to be good, right? And I went into it cautiously stoked. I came out of it. I liked it, did not love it, didn't hate it, but there were times where I was going between love and hate throughout the entire
Oh,
movie.
wow.
So like, I don't even know if hate's the word, but like disappointed. And I was like, I do think this movie isn't geared towards people like me. I was talking to Large about on Pod Brothers. We did a very quick spoiler free, check it out on My Mom's Basement review. And I think he said it was the best comic book movie since Endgame. And I was like, Large, that's a big one. That's you're talking about the web slinger there. You're just glossing over, and the web slinger had himself quite a movie, right, with a good villain and everything. But I'll be interested to see the difference between us. I think, as usual, I think you'll always be a little more positive about it, but I do think there were things I really loved about this, and there were things that I just was kind of like mad about.
Yeah, I loved it. I tweeted out that it was like so James Gunn, but also unlike anything James Gunn has ever done at the same time. It felt
Yes.
fresh. It didn't feel like a Guardians reboot, revamp, where he's just taking a gaggle of like characters that are weird and zany and putting them together and putting great music to it. But it had all of those elements. It had the great music, it had the weird characters, it had the Polka-Dot Mans and the King Sharks. But I really felt like this was the direction, like this movie had the direction that I want the DCEU to go with going forward. Not necessarily for Batman or Superman, can have them cracking dick jokes and fart jokes and stuff like that. But for the weird characters, for the zany characters, I feel like you could make a Green Lantern movie that's a little more Thor Ragnarok than Batman versus Superman. I feel like you can get funny and violent with it instead of just needlessly dark. The Zack Snyder, we're going to show rain and we're going to show lightning and you're going to barely be able to see. I mean, that was one of the big issues I had with the first Suicide Squad, which I don't know if you even saw the David Ayer Suicide Squad.
Didn't even see it. No.
A lot of it was dark and it was just like really hard to tell what was going on, almost in that like Game of Thrones way, where you're like, the villains are these like alien, dark, like black, gooey things, and they're killing them at night. It's just like, I don't need that. This movie was so bright. I mean, aside from the stuff in the beginning, wherever they got sent to on that beach, like the whole movie was in Panama where they shot it, supposed to be somewhere else, but it was like a colorful movie and it worked.
And like, Warner Brothers didn't blame people for not having light enough movie screens, right? Because I remember that was HBO's line when everyone was complaining about the Game of Thrones Battle of Winterfell or whatever it is. Two things. I saw it in the theater, and I imagine you saw it in the theater
Yep.
as well.
Yep.
And that was a Jeff D'Lo. Have to see it in IMAX. Jeff, I don't have. This is a legitimate gripe of mine. Is when movie theaters say they have an IMAX theater and it's an IMAX screen and they shot in IMAX. No. IMAX theater. That means you have a fucking screen that is like 7 stories high. I need to fucking feel like I am in the movie because it's such a giant theater and there's like 1,000 rows of seats and stuff like that. So I couldn't see it in like an IMAX. There was nothing really all that close to me that I could get to, but I still got like I think a good experience. I think it is something for people that are just kind of I mean, the real Suicide Squad are people that are listening to this right now who haven't seen it and are just looking for like a little, primer. I would see it in the movie because it is
Yeah.
like a graphically and even like audio wise, the audio files will appreciate it too because I had some good audio in my theater. It does kind of tickle the senses in that way. But I counted it this time because I said this before Black Widow. I said, man, there was a lot of trailers. I had like commercials. I think there was a car commercial in there where the actor's speaking over a thing. And I'm like, oh God. And I think I had the same trailers because it's the same genre, right? So obviously you're going to have kind of the same trailers. 25 minutes of trailers. It was exactly
Wow.
25 minutes, which is absurd. And I got to the movies 10 minutes late. It was like, I think it was a 6:45 movie, and I got there at 6:55, and it was already 10 minutes in. And then we had another sit through another 50 minutes of trailers. Not one person was in the theater when I got there 10 minutes in. We ended up getting 2 people in. So my brother and I and 2 other people, 4 people total, which is crazy. Even with like, I think they had, I don't know, throughout the day, probably about 15 to 20 showings on different, formats and stuff like that. But still, that was a yikes, even though it's on HBO Max.
That's
And
crazy. My theater was sold out. It's packed.
see, that's what I don't get. And I had a few people tell me that, and I was like, I don't understand why it was this way. And the theater, even the movie theater parking lot, wasn't too crowded. So I don't understand what was going on
It's wild.
there compared to
And
other places.
usually
But
like when I see that, like when I have an experience like you had, I start thinking like, oh yikes, is the box office for this not going to be great? And they said the box office for Suicide Squad was kind of disappointing. Like even in the pandemic, the Delta variants running wild, they were like, it's not what we expected it to do, which worried me because like even if you have the attitude that you have where you were like kind of so on some of the aspects of the movie, I feel like you would agree that this is kind of where we want them to go in the future, at least more in this direction. So the fact that it didn't do overwhelmingly great at the box office worries me that DC will be like, maybe that was a misstep, because I don't think it is a
yeah,
misstep.
no, DC, if you're listening, we have Bob Iger's a listener. We have Kevin Feige as a longtime listener. Whoever the fuck is in charge of DC, get them to listen because you guys are in the right spot. You said it good too. Like you said it best about like building up these other side characters, making it bright. It doesn't have to all be, Batman and Superman versus the world and have these like grand scale things. You could have some fun with certain characters. That's how you build a universe. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
As much as Robert Downey Jr. being Iron Man was so important to Marvel, but just as important was kind of just growing it out. And the Infinity War worked because you had the Guardians coming in, you had Doctor Strange playing a huge role, and you had, obviously the Avengers, but then you had Black Panther and the Wakanda scene, all that stuff. Like I'm getting goosebumps just talking about the fucking Infinity War. Again, I'm such a goddamn nerd. But all that stuff worked, and it's because you had so many different things, and that's why people were cheering during the portal scene and stuff like that. They had all these, connections with all these characters. So it's like they listen, and to be honest, you guys fuck up Superman and Batman so much you can't rely on them anymore. You've destroyed that brand. But yeah, you said it perfect. And I will say, I went into the theater, and just because no one was there, I was like, this is a red flag. Because I had saw the same thing where I think it said they were on pace to be like the #1 box office for the weekend, but it was still falling short of expectations. But like we're living in weird times, man, especially when you can just watch it on your couch on HBO Max. It is the summer. People have lives, not me, but other people have lives. And you could just like, and if it was doing well enough around the country, I wasn't like, oh my God. I actually kind of preferred it because when I'm literally like the only person in the theater that's, I'm not bothering anyone. I just started taking notes on my phone so I could make sure the podcast came out well. So I just took notes on my phone as if I was in my living room. It was a win-win for everyone involved. Except for the movie theater. They probably took a bath.
Yeah. I was going to say, speaking of it being on HBO Max, if you haven't seen it yet, reminder, it's on HBO Max. So you get a 7-day free trial or whatever. I would say it's worth getting a trial just to watch this movie. There's some behind the scenes extras on there that I checked out. It was pretty cool. They have like a little 10-minute documentary on James Gunn, the way he would play music for the actors on set, which I know he did with Guardians as well, kind of to get them in the mood, get them in the vibe of the movie. And I would honestly just recommend going back and checking out those extras because I had a good time watching them. And I'm excited to go back and watch this on HBO Max, like on a little 3G, and then get into it. Before we get into it, let's talk about one of our sponsors, Cuts Clothing. Cuts Clothing is some of my favorite stuff in the world. I say it every week. You saw me wearing it at the UFC press conference. These versatile shirts you could wear at the gym, at the bar, to a nice restaurant, to work, on the couch, to the movie theater. If you're going to see the Suicide Squad, I mean, the Suicide Squad went through a bunch of different environments in this movie, right? They went from jail to a hot environment. I mean, sometimes they were in the Jotunheim or whatever that place was. It looked maybe chilly in there.
They went swimming.
Yeah, they went swimming. They need cuts. They need cuts clothing. This is our guy, Steve Borelli. Don't forget, it's a Borelli that founded this. Is he related to Frankie? I don't know. Get them on 23andMe. We'll see. They might have a little percentage relation. And in 2016, Steve Borelli set out to create clothes for every occasion the modern man faces, and he was successful in doing this. They've got the Cuts hoodies. Now that we're getting towards fall, I've got one of the Cuts hoodies. So comfortable, cool looking hoodie as well. They've got the wrinkle-free Pika fabric. They've got the polo design. They've got that stuff that you could wear to the office. That's like kind of fancy. Wear it to the golf course, right? And if you use the promo code BASEMENT at cutsclothing.com/basement, you'll get 15% off.
There has been a seismic change in this world over the last year. One thing that will come from it that will be good. We are not going back to the old ways of uncomfortable clothes. Everyone's going to be comfortable, but if you get something that you can wear from your house to the gym to the, the office or the home or wherever you are doing your work, that is going to be the new way to go. So shout out to Cuts Clothing.
Shout out Cuts Clothing. All right, Clem, let's get into Suicide Squad. Spoilers. If you haven't seen it at this point, big spoilers. And I mean, we're going to hit the ground running because that's how this movie opens. We open up with a little Johnny Cash, great intro song, and Savant, Michael Roker's character, just throwing a ball at this, throwing like a bouncy ball in his little cell. He kills a bird right away, which as a bird guy yourself, you must have been upset about that. I mean, a couple birds die in this movie.
Jumping ahead, the bird murder that happens later in this, the fucking like flames offensive is the word I use to describe it. I mean, it's all capital letters. I'm in the movie theater in my notes, and I did a little double tap to get all caps lock offensive. This leading it off, and I was like, what the fuck was that? Jimmy Gunn just coming out fucking blazing on my ass. And like you said, you start with Johnny Cash, and I looked at my brother and I go, oh, here we go. Because again, one thing we were really excited about was the soundtrack of it all. And we're gonna throw fucking Johnny right into our eardrums off the bat. We're like, all right, this is a James Gunn production here.
He just knows how to put music to movies. And this had a very different soundtrack than the Guardians movies. It wasn't all throwback. There were a lot of modern tunes in it, but every song he put in, I just said, like, fuck, this guy knows how to set the tone of a movie with a song. He understands it. And that was another issue that the first Suicide Squad movie had. When everything came out with Batman versus Superman getting bad reviews, the studio panicked and they rehired a new studio to completely re-edit Suicide Squad. And David Ayer's edit became edited by the company that did the trailer. They literally hired a trailer company to edit the movie. And Clem, they put a new song in every scene. It was just like Bohemian Rhapsody, here's Seven Nation Army, and it was all like fun songs that everyone knows, but it almost became a karaoke movie. And that's not like what you want, especially where David Ayer shot such a dark, grounded, realistic, like Zack Snyder verse movie. So the mesh just did not work at all. It was just very strange. So getting that corrected here was very cool.
That's a problem when you do have, like, if you just play nothing but the hits, nothing but the motherfucking hits. You do something like that in a movie, it just feels like you said, a karaoke movie where you need to kind of have something that's a good song, but not in everyone's radar. Half the songs in the Guardians movies, which I love, at least Guardians 2, like I've never heard half of those songs until the Guardians movies, and it's just like, but it's absolutely perfect in terms of its fit, and it just kind of keeps you going. And like, Time Warner Brothers, whatever you want to call it, I'm sure their catalog is extensive, and it sounds like they just lumped everything in. They did the old fucking meme where they're just slapping that on and just throw a fucking like song everyone knows in there, but it doesn't play well unless you're doing like Sing or something like that, a kids movie and trust me, those movies, the movies that are for kids where it's usually covers or something. It's not like the originals, but just movies where you can take the song and enjoy that, and the kids obviously love it because it's bright on the screen. Those movies are worth their weight in gold. Oh Sing 2 coming out. We got a Sing 2 coming out, and parents are happy. Parents are in the streets for this one, Rob.
Wow, you're gonna be camping out for Sing 2 like it's Endgame.
Hell yeah.
So we meet the Suicide Squad, Task Force X right away. Amanda Waller just basically assumes the concept of the Suicide Squad right away. She's like, all right, the deal. We're putting fucking bombs in their heads. If they don't comply, we're blowing them up. Suicide Squad. They're all expendable. And they look ridiculous. We have Boomerang. He was in the first movie. We have Michael Roker on this team. We have Javelin. We have Savant. And they have this cool like introduction. Pete Davidson's character, Weasel. They have that slow motion walk. They get sent in. And we realize pretty quickly they are not the real Task Force X, or at least they are, but they're really there to cause a diversion for another team. the Bloodsport, Peacemaker, King Shark, Ratcatcher team. We've got the Polka-Dot Man on that squad as well. Now, this was shocking because Pete Davidson, I think, is the first one, or Weasel's the first one to go down, which was such a funny scene when he just starts flailing in the water and everyone realizes, like, did anyone see if Weasel could fucking swim? And Rick Flag is like, oh, damn, Rick Flag, another character from the first Suicide Squad. And they didn't. Weasel drowns, or at least we think until, spoilers, mid-credit scene. And Pete Davidson's the first one to go out, and he allegedly sold the Suicide Squad out. And he's like, all right, guys, we cut the deal. I'm here. I brought the Suicide Squad here, Task Force X. He gets his fucking face blown off. I mean, right off the bat, sets the tone for the movie. The entire team starts to go down. Nathan Fillion's character with the arms that like went and started smacking everybody on the head. Hysterical. Dead. Javelin, dead. He gives his javelin to Harley Quinn and he's like, use this for. And he goes out. Harley's pissed that she never got to learn the final word of what he wanted to say. And the diversion works because the other Suicide Squad, very successful in getting in. They see the explosion. They're like, Amanda Waller, what's going on with that? She's like, don't worry about it. That's the diversion.
I guess you could kind of say this for both teams and every member of the Suicide Squad, but very much Masters of the Universe vibe, where they are like the misfits, weird ass, the disconnected kid or whatever the fuck his name is. And he's just like punching people and they're just like, what's going on? Very fucking funny. And I like how they set the tone right away. Boom. This is going to be a fucking gore fest. My brother asked me as we were sitting into our seats, he goes, is this rated R? And I was like, yeah, I'm pretty sure I remember the Red Band trailer. I'm like, when it's a Red Band trailer, it gets a little crazy. And by the end of the movie, I honestly said this might have been NC-17 because it was fucking gory. James Gunn, I feel like he was like, you know what? I don't have to worry about like the kiddie breaks being on for like Marvel where there's no real gore and you can't really be too explicit. They still want to get the kids in and stuff like that. And he just let it fucking fly. And James Gunn, like we all have James Gunn, Guardians James Gunn. There's a filmmaker, James Gunn, that probably likes to do shit like this, whatever the fuck he can. And he's kind of had to be he's been working for the mouse for a long time. They don't like when half the people in the movie have been dismembered, their heads sliced in half and all that kind of stuff. He also probably wrote this in a dark place. He probably wrote this thinking he was no longer going to be doing Marvel movies. He had his little babies. He lost his Guardians family. They were snatched from him from a tweet from a decade earlier. So I feel like Jimmy might have wrote this in a really dark place. I just want to give him a hug right now. I just want to tell him everything's going to be okay. I mean, he knows that now. Guardians 3 is going to come out. It's going to smash. He has the holiday special coming out.
Yeah.
But damn, James, fuck. That's all I can say after that opening scene.
Some gory shit. I mean, we even saw Dick and Balls in the Suicide Squad. At one point, there was a Dick and Balls.
I missed the Dick and Balls. Everyone keeps telling me with Dick and Balls. I was like, my dick radar is completely off right now. I have to recalibrate it, I guess.
It was when Peacemaker and Bloodsport were going through the village, killing who, we find out to be the heroes. And one of them just like, I think like pulled down a curtain and we just saw Dick and Balls. Yeah. I was just like, oh, whoa. Okay. This is some superhero movie, but it feels like Warner Brothers, DC, whatever, the studio that has always been like the ones that are getting in the filmmaker's way, where the Snyder cut is like, he's like, that's not my movie. The Ayer cut, he's like, that's not my movie. Feels like they left James Gunn the fuck alone and we're like, do whatever you want. We're not going to interfere. And he was like, all right, cool. I'm going to get wild. And we learned that the Task Force X mission is to go to Jotunheim, this former Nazi era laboratory where they hold a secret experiment known as Project Starfish, and they have to destroy it. So they have to go. It's an anti-American regime. We could get overthrown. They want to use Project Starfish against us. We talked about Starro from the trailer. We were excited about Starro, and I feel like he lived up to all expectations and more. By the end of this movie, which we'll get to the end, it didn't just feel like an expendable CGI fight like the first Suicide Squad very much had. Like, I don't even remember who the villain at the end of the Suicide Squad fight was. It was like Cara Delevingne and someone else. I don't know who she was fighting. But when they showed the starfish like getting off the guy's face and what it does to your face, holy shit, that was some NC-17 shit.
Yeah. And Starro, like you said, big, and when those things are just raining down from the sky, you just feel like you're completely fucked. So yeah.
Out of his like vagina armpit, he was like little starfish coming out.
All right, so I wasn't the only one. I didn't have to be bonked or anything. I was like, that's a vagina. That's a vagina that is shooting out fucking little baby stars. Weasel drowning, the Team 2 reveal of how they kind of just did it. Yep. that was very James Gunn. I felt like right off the bat, I was laughing in a serious spot and all that kind of stuff. And then shout out my birds getting revenge as they're eating what's his name after his head blows up.
Yeah.
No, Savant. I thought they were Savant after he.
Oh yeah. I think you're right.
He got his head exploded, and then it says like Warner Brothers presents, and I was like, well,
I
we're
loved
fucking
all
making
of those titles.
Yes.
Those titles throughout the movie, that was straight comic book splash page. Like really, there were when King Shark rips the guy apart. There was some like slow motion gore parts where you're like, okay, that's James Gunn being like a filmmaker, an artist. Where those frames are like paintings.
Even the Harley Quinn one, where it's like the mission is Jotunheim, and then it changes to like save Harley, but they change it from like fire to like smoke. I thought that was a nice little touch on it as well. So they definitely nailed some of like that was a very nice touch. A little chef's kiss on all that kind of stuff. But
even Harley's escape sequence with the flowers and the cartoons behind her, I thought that was awesome.
I absolutely love that scene. And then she gets the javelin too, and Lars said, he goes, is this the way that Harley, her like world, it looks to her as she's just killing people? She just sees flowers and happiness. So I thought that was a pretty good quote by the big man.
And the way she uses the javelin at one point, she like puts it into a guy's foot and like does like a jump over him with it. Oh my God. I mean, some brutal scenes. We'll get to all of that. Rick Flag's team, like I said, Ambush, Savant, Captain Boomerang, Blackguard, TDK, Javelin, and Mongol all dead. However, the distraction allowed for Bloodsport's team, Peacemaker, King Shark, Polka-Dot Man, and Ratcatcher 2 to enter the country undetected. So Flag is captured, we think, by villains at this point. We find out later are rebel soldiers, and the squad convinces the rebellion leader to assist them after Peacemaker and Bloodsport go through their entire camp, killing each and every person. And in some of the funniest ways, too, Bloodsport uses the Mandalorian fire at points to his advantage. Much better than Din Djarin uses it, actually. I think one of the funniest moments in the movie is John Cena walking past the guy and just slicing him up 100 times as he walks past. John Cena was so fucking good. And the chemistry between him and Idris Elba was incredible. It almost reminded me of that Quill Thor, like battling for supremacy thing.
I hope Mando watched and learned how to use a fucking blowtorch, because that is how you use a goddamn blowtorch. This is going to come off. You're probably getting mad at me for this take, but I'm going to stand by it. I don't know what it was. Maybe it's because in my world, and I was introduced to him as Stringer Bell, not as proper Idris Elba with his fancy boy accent. And John Cena is the face's face, right? In terms of wrestling. I felt, and like, listen, I love cursing. One of my favorite things in the world to do is curse. One of my biggest weaknesses is that I curse too much, even on podcasts. When I'm listening, I like hit fast forward, and every time I fast forward, it's myself cursing. I understand sometimes it's a little too much. I just didn't believe they're cursing. When Idris Elba kept saying, "Oh, for fuck's sake," I was like, it just wasn't hitting right. And I'm a connoisseur of curse comedy, and I did not like the cursing done by them. I like cursing. There was good cursing done in this movie.
That stuns me. John Cena is one of my favorite curses in the movie, if not my favorite, when he's like, nobody likes to show off. And he's like, unless what we're showing off is dope as fuck. That got a huge laugh out of my whole theater. Everyone was loving it.
Well, I'll say, I think half my theater was loving it too, but it was only like 2 of the 4 people. But still, I mean, like the percentages is there. That's why it's like, I think it's a me thing more than anyone else. But I'm just saying, like, that was a legitimate like gripe I had right off the bat. Was I don't know, like the fake jerk offs and stuff like that. It felt like it was like watching like Santa Claus and the Easter Bunny doing it. I just couldn't buy that it was like someone that has a little bit more of an edge to them. You know what I mean? Yeah. So that was just a personal thing for me. I
think maybe I've been like worn down by, I've seen some of the earlier John Cena comedies that he's done, like with Tina Fey and Amy Poehler, the Cock Blockers comedy. I've seen him curse enough where I'm like, I'm used to it now, John. He's an actor. He's trying to get this Hollywood career going.
Exactly. And the other thing was I liked how they made I'm gonna just keep calling him Stringer because my brain doesn't work right calling by their real names anymore. When they kind of did the thing with the kids where he's like, we have your daughter, she's gonna get sent through the American penal system, which like American penal system got dragged in this one, which I think James Gunn also wanted to get some things off his chest, about certain
James Gunn made a pretty political Suicide Squad movie. Yeah.
He did, and he didn't like bash you over the head with it, but if you were just paying attention, you got it loud and clear. And I've said this in the past. The worst thing about having kids, other than the lack of sleep and the lack of money and the lack of basically time, is that they can be used against you in situations like this.
Yep.
And the only positive to it all is that if like someone has a gun on you, you go, listen, I have kids, and there's a chance they may take the gun back. This is at least what the movies have taught me. So as a parent, I felt for him because the guy probably would have been very happy. Those Crocs looked extremely comfortable. I just became a Croc guy. I am very excited about becoming a Croc guy. Being in prison may not be so bad if you get a free pair of Crocs at the end of the day, right? Everyone was rocking those bright orange Crocs. They were pretty sweet.
I noticed that as well. You know what? I was like, oh, they give them orange Crocs. That's like they actually get the orange color for them and everything. I guess Crocs maybe sends those to prisons or something. I don't know.
It makes sense. They're comfortable. They're pretty cheap, and you can't like hang yourself with them. You don't need shoelaces, right? So it does, I guess, kind of make a ton of sense. That was my introduction. So if any listeners out there that work in prisons, if you have Crocs out there, it's like I know the nurse, I know like medical field. They're big in the medical field, so if they're big in the penal system too. Very very interesting stuff. Also, guy almost killed Superman with a kryptonite bullet. Tip of the cap right there. I gotta respect
badass. He put Superman in the ICU. Yeah, his whole like weapon system that were coming off his chest. I loved Bloodsport as a character. I liked his helmet as well, with just like the blank face, but almost like the teeth by the bottom. I thought that was cool. We didn't know who he was going to be for a long time. It was debated. I don't know much about Bloodsport as a character in the comics, but he seemed very similar to Deadshot from the last movie, who Will Smith played. Has a story with his daughter, where his daughter was taken away from him. It's not necessarily the American juvenile system or whatever, but it's sort of similar. And I thought he was just more well executed in this one, with becoming a leader and all that. Maybe it's just Idris being a great actor, but yeah, I was into it.
And I'm going to say this too, now that I think about it. Stringer only cursed when Stringer had to curse because he was pissed, because he was like a businessman, Stringer Bell. This guy is not Stringer Bell, but he's always going to be Stringer in my mind, just like Carcetti's going to be Carcetti instead of Littlefinger as he crushed it in Game of Thrones. So I have to say, like the cursing thing, it's probably more that I was just like, he was just throwing around, oh, for fuck's sake, like 5 times in 10 minutes. I thought it was a little much. And that's coming from someone who adores cursing more than anything in the world. Did you have this when they're talking about Corto Maltese, which is the name of the island where they went?
Yep.
I got Jurassic Park Island vibes, Isla Nublar, and I was like, oh, we're going to Jurassic Park. I thought it was a Jurassic Park Island for like 5 minutes, but my brain is like not able to think like that.
I could totally, and even some of the like dark scenes kind of look like the forest in Jurassic Park, like when it was like dark and rainy in Jurassic Park. But we learn on this journey more about Polka-Dot Man, who I loved. He starts to get like this weird like face rash where polka dots are glowing out of his skin. It looks really gross. It looks like something you would see on like a garbage pail kid or something. And he has to go expel his polka dots twice a day because his mother did experiments on all her kids, and she tried to make them into superheroes, and something went wrong with his, and some of the others died, and it's a dark story. And he was just emo and kind of wanted to die the whole time, and he didn't want to be a superhero, but his polka dots would burn people kind of gruesomely. And I loved this. When he would look at the Suicide Squad, he would see his mom and all of them. By the time we saw his mom as fucking Starro, oh my god, I was like losing. I was a knee slapper. I was losing my mind laughing.
You go into these movies with these kind of like forgotten about comic book characters, and now you kind of go with like the radar. I'm like, I'm going to fall in love with these guys, and I didn't know how it was going to happen with them. Especially you didn't know when you were going to lose characters too, right? Especially after the opening scene, which I think everyone appreciated. I think most people thought would be coming. They're going to let it be known right away. People are going to die. Not everyone's coming back from the Suicide Squad. That's kind of how the Suicide Squad works. And Polka-Dot Man, I think he kind of stole the show for that.
Yeah, I mean, him and King Shark, we all expected that we would love King Shark, and I feel like he lived up to expectations. Every time he almost died in this movie, I was like, no. Like when he grabs onto Starro, I think Starro like throws him through a building at one point. I was like, you got to be kidding me. I thought his little friends were going to kill him in the water when I saw that blood. Yep. I mean, the fact that he survived makes me very happy. I want to see more of King Shark in the future.
I hope that was probably a James Gunn thing more than anything. And he's like, trust me, guys, you're going to want to keep this one. This, like, I brought Groot, and I made Groot the fucking like star of the first Guardians, and then Baby Groot the star of the second. You're going to want to keep this guy around. You're not going to want to, fucking put him up on the wall anytime soon. You're going to want that shark going around. And I tell you, like, out of every superhero I've ever seen on the big screen, I identified most with King Shark. Very basic, always hungry, and just trying to have fun. Looks at butterflies flying in the air, just trying to make, like, I would have been running at the aquarium watching the fish go back.
He's like, forth. Oh, I can't come in. I wear a disguise mustache.
Oh.
And, like, so funny.
I went out to the bathroom and I missed that scene, and I rewatched. I kind of just but the thing is, I originally was going to go on my phone, turn on HBO Max on my phone, and as I'm walking, which is a sweet little life hack if you could do it, but I was like scrubbing. It wasn't, the service wasn't that good. I was like, God, this isn't going to work. I came home, watched it to fill in the gaps before the podcast, and that fucking mustache line slayed me. That was very much Guardians in my mind. So that absolutely killed me.
He was kind of the Groot of this movie. You said it, but I could see in the Suicide Squad 2, if that, or I guess it would be 3, if that ever happens, him having a little baby, and then for merchandising, the baby King Shark walking around in those little shorts. Oh my God.
Are they going to call it Baby Shark? That's definitely
copyrighted, huh? Yeah.
Oh. Yeah, maybe Prince Shark, and it's going to be like a little young shark. And the fact that it's Sylvester Stallone instead of Vin Diesel, which is just like the original Vin Diesel, Sylvester Stallone, it's absolutely perfect.
The squad's next objective is to capture the Thinker. He was the metahuman scientist in charge of Project Starfish. He worked with Starro the Conqueror for 30 years, and he has, just like in the comics, he has all of these little like syringes going into his skull. He has a great character design. He just looks like a comic book character through and through. And this movie felt, I feel like a broken record saying this sometimes, because I know I've said it about Civil War. I've said it about certain movies here and there. It felt so much like a comic book in its weirdness, in its chapters, in the titles on screen, in the goriness, in the funny dialogue. It just felt straight pulled from a page. And so did this scene where they all go to the bar together. They're still kind of reluctant to be friendly with one another because they are each their own villain. They each have their own problems. And they wind up just drinking and having a good time. They're like, we'll have one. And then they're like, you're really going to be that guy? They wind up having a great time. The Thinker comes into the bar. And all while this is going on, Harley Quinn has been captured by the Corte Maltese government. And this prince or the king or someone in charge wants to marry her. He's like, you encapsulate the perfect anti-American vibe. Like, my people think it would be great for me to marry you. I wanted to bring you in for this date. She falls in love with him. It's a very Harley Quinn animated series-esque sequence, I felt like, where it's like you get to see inside of her brain. You get to see what she's thinking, like the cartoons, like Large said. And then she just fucking stabs him. She kills him in cold blood. And it's kind of like a shocking, played funny moment. And she's tortured by the government. She eventually escapes. And I wanted to note this, her escape, where she puts the key in her toe, and then she like goes upside down, puts the key in the lock, twists it. James Gunn said she actually did that. Margot Robbie.
Margot?
Yeah.
When she did that, I actually thought, I go, wow, the stunt woman killed that. I actually thought it was the stunt woman, and Margot does it in one take. So I guess I have to recalibrate my Margot Robbie like abilities, which, trust me, I was already in love with Margot Robbie before I knew she could do that, something like that in one move. I am over. And Bob Fox, Ranger fan, noted Ranger fan. Shout out our guy 610, right? Yep. You always get the Margot Robbie reaction pictures, stuff like that. Oh man, she's just the bee's knees. I love her so much. I will say this, I haven't really watched any Harley Quinn outside of like the trailer for the first Suicide Squad a million times, like a horny asshole. But the I don't. It's hard for me, and this might be because she played that she had the similar accent in Wolf of Wall Street. It's just weird. Her accent is so thick, and I know that's not Margot Robbie. I have a hard time being like, all right, that's Harley Quinn there. So I will say that's only like it's like the lightest criticism possible, but it is something I came away thinking during the movie. But absolutely awesome scene. She kills the guy because she's like, killing kids, that's a step too far.
She is one red flag, she said.
Yes. We dealt with killing kid either as a joke or as something like that, as like a plot device and all this kind of stuff, like 8 different times during this movie. I don't know if I feel like this is because James Gunn was like, listen, guys, that pedophile tweet is just a joke. I am very much anti any kind of harm for kids, and I want kids to be fine. But like, Weasel killed 28 children, right? That was like the thing they said, when they were introducing him. Obviously, the Harley Quinn thing, and I'm missing like 5 killing kid jokes. That's how prevalent they were in this movie. And I was just getting bashed over the head with it. And I'm like, I don't know if James Gunn was doing it as a fuck you to everybody or as a like, hey guys, nothing's worse than being known as the pedophile joke. That's just something even at Barstool, we're like, we're not going to joke about that one today. We're not going to, write any jokes. You just be like, fuck these guys, fry them, bury them under the jail, all that kind of stuff. So that was very weird. That was very weird for me. Also, the scene where they're going out in the club or whatever, and they're like, just one drink. And I know Bob's not a big drinker or whatever, But I will say, like, it's crazy how many times the craziest nights of your life are the one drink night. It's the night
That
where you're
happened to me.
preparing.
No,
It's
I'm not a big drinker, but like it happened to me with Glenny Balls and Za. Went out to the gym saloon with that crew, and I just couldn't escape them.
that's the real life Suicide Squad. Glenny Balls and Za. I mean, now listen, Glenny Balls, not a party guy. We know that.
Not a
He's
party guy.
very
No.
looking. Definitely not a party guy. Za is, I mean, pound for pound, the craziest fuck here at Barstool. That guy, when I was in Vegas with him, he was up, till the sun was rising.
Yeah.
It's just the thing is, Za, he can only do so much. We lost him all Saturday. He didn't leave his hotel room.
You'll always get the morning tweet where he's like, "Never again," and he's like,
yes.
yeah.
Oh, so yeah, the one drink nights are always bad news bears, and I loved how Cena made sure the rat got his. Sebastian was the rat's name, right?
Yeah.
I like how that's when you start feeling like there's a team dynamic being built, is when even the rat's getting his drink. And I have to say, I actually kind of fell in love with the rat. I didn't think I was going to like him.
So did
at first.
I.
I became a Sebastian fan.
And two guys that have dealt with New York City rats our whole life. We know how disgusting they are. We know how like vile these creatures are. By the end of this movie, I was kind of feeling like Idris. Like I wanted to like, all right, I'm gonna pet this little rat. Like it's not so bad. They are actually joined by Harley once they get the Thinker. They go to capture her. They think this is kind of what we saw in the first trailer. They think that she's still kidnapped, and her heart is warmed by the fact that they were coming to get her. She was like, "You're coming to get me? I can go back in and you can do the plan." Like that was so Harley Quinn, so funny to me. And Rick Flag and Idris were just like, "Fucking A, all right, let's go. Here we go." And they go into Jotunheim with the Thinker. Most of the squad rigs the facility with explosives, and Rick Flag and Ratcatcher 2 enter the facility underground with the Thinker. So they discover now that Project Starfish is actually Starro the Conqueror, which I thought was funny. We got Kang the Conqueror and Starro the Conqueror in 1 year. A great year for the Conquerors. And he's this giant alien who controls his victims through smaller versions of himself, spores, like we said, that attach to these faces. We get to see the gory look of this guy's face who had Starro attached to him. And they say, like, can we free these people? And they say, nope. Dead corpses underneath there. Kind of fucking brutal. The Thinker reveals that Starro was brought to Earth by the American government. We get to see this old footage as well, which was some of my favorite stuff in the whole movie. It kind of reminded me of like horror movie vibes, alien vibes, the old astronaut footage who have been secretly funding the experiments on the Corto Maltese for decades. So it's actually Americans behind this. And the Peacemaker has been sent there under secret orders to cover up America's involvement. He actually turns on the team in this moment in a way where he doesn't want to turn on them, but he's like, this is why I'm actually here. And we get a huge battle between the Suicide Squad. I mean, the Jotunheim starts falling apart. The explosives start going off early. Rick Flag and the Peacemaker are put against each other. This is where the movie really kicks into high gear, and it was going 70 miles an hour down the highway anyway.
So there was, like I said, throughout the movie, there's times where I'm like, oh, I love this fucking movie. It's very much what I was hoping for. And then there was other points where it felt like it was like a fucking Sharknado on steroids, right? And I say that in a nice way. I'm not trying to be mean about it, but it's like, it was like over the top crazy. And it's not as bad as Sharknado by any means, but there were some like campy moments, whatever, I think on purpose. The whole reveal when after with the fight and then it says 8 minutes earlier, that's when the movie, when it was like, oh, we're back, we're humming. That was exactly what I loved. I got to shout out Large. He did say this too. I didn't even notice this. Jotunheim. Do you know what Jotunheim, what that means for us?
No.
Planet of the Frost Giants. They mention it. They mentioned Jotunheim, and he said it's the land of the Frost Giants or whatever. Loki could be from there, whatever. So and I'm sure we'll get corrected by the people who actually know the answer to that. But I was like, oh shit, I had no idea that there's a double meaning with that. There was a lot of pull
from Large, huh?
Right? A lot of Marvel DC crossover too. We got Taika just fucking straight up the Rat Catcher, which was very cool. Yeah. So, and getting those double dips, obviously James Gunn double dips as well. So it was very cool to see that. I have to admit, I understand if you watch the previews, you're spoiling the movie for yourself. But I loved the Harley Quinn joke in the previews where you find out that they're going to rescue her and she escapes. That just happened though. I feel like that was like a spoiler. I felt like that was like a pretty heavy spoiler because I was like, oh, they're not going to do that, and it's like whatever. It doesn't really matter. I just thought that was weird. I also have to admit the Starro's lair when they went into the basement, mostly when they get to the end where they just have in the kind of the corridor, the dead end where it's like the journalists and the different people, the political prisoners, and they all the stars. It felt almost like a haunted house, and I'm not talking like this crazy wild haunted house. I'm talking like kind of like a carnival haunted house.
Like the one
like
you and me went to.
Yes, exactly. They keep doing the same motions. It felt a little campy in that regard. It didn't feel like over the top special, like a comic book movie in terms of the level. But that's kind of like a nitpick. But it did.
It's
That was just one
interesting
of those
because
things.
that was one of my favorite parts.
You
So
did
it's
you
like,
like how
yeah,
you
I
like it
mean,
though? That's fine.
maybe I'll go back and on HBO Max and like watch for that next time. But like being in that little lair where the Thinker was revealing all of that, I was like, oh fuck, this is like cool looking. I liked seeing the stars on the people's faces. So I'm gonna go back and watch it through maybe that lens, and maybe my opinion will change a bit. But for the first watch, that was like one of the things that I thought was coolest.
And that's the thing is, as I was saying, I was like, I guarantee you people like that. For me, I didn't like it. And then if I watch it again, maybe on the TV here, I'll flip. So it's one of those things. I'm not going to get into like a fucking fight over, but it is one of those things that I was like,
You don't want to fucking
that's
tussle
kind of
over
weird.
it, Clem. You don't.
God, man. The last year has made me so tired of fighting
I
online.
know.
It's
Yeah.
like I just have no energy left in me
Like,
anymore
all
for
right,
this. So
man. If you that's your opinion, stick to it, man. It's like the Big Lebowski. Well, that's your opinion, man.
it's like your opinion, man. I will say that too. The journalist line felt like another one of James Gunn's things. Journalists getting tortured for trying to report the truth and stuff like that. So
Yeah,
very
James
interesting
is
stuff to
definitely.
see.
I mean, the whole U.S. government funding the Nazis. I think that was,
Yeah.
there's things that happened like that back in the day. I think it was all in relation to that. We get a big dramatic moment where Peacemaker actually fucking kills Rick Flag. And now I know you didn't see the first Suicide Squad, but he was a pretty prominent character in that. So I really expected him to survive. I don't know why. Joel Kinnaman, kudos to you for making me fucking care about that character in this movie, because by the time he died, I was surprised and I was like, oh, damn. Fucking, he was trying to do the right thing. Peacemaker gets him, and then Peacemaker almost kills Ratcatcher too. And that's when we get the 8 minutes earlier, and we get to see the second part of the team. Felt almost Tarantino esque, the out of sorts, like, here's what actually happened, and we'll get to that. And by the time you start getting to it and seeing what happened, you see King Shark playing with the dumb friends who turn against him. Very funny scene. You get to see all the stuff with Martin, I think was that his name?
Milton. Oh, come on,
Milton,
respect the
sorry. Oh,
dead, Bob.
I don't even know his name. He was with us for 3 hours. I forgot his name. That whole back and forth. And when the levels start falling with Idris on Bloodsport on each one, you start thinking back to 8 minutes earlier with Cena on top of Ratcatcher, and you're like, oh shit, this is about to happen. He falls right onto the level where he's supposed to. He locks eyes with Peacemaker, and they each shoot each other. And now we get a call back to earlier when he said, my bullets shoot, even straighter than yours. And he's like, how is that possible? He says, smaller bullets. And we see in slow motion Idris's bullet going through Cena's, catches him right in the jugular. Awesome scene, awesome slow motion moment, something straight out of a comic book when you see the bullet kind of like unravel and explode as the
Yes.
one goes through it, right? And just like one of the cooler dramatic moments, and one where we know the Peacemaker show is coming. So I thought in this moment, oh, I guess the Peacemaker show is a prequel, how we get up to this moment. And I was kind of disappointed. I was like, like, why are you doing a prequel if we know what his fate is? Obviously, that is not going to be the case. I'm curious, do you think originally Peacemaker was dead here? And then they were like, hey, do you want to do a show? And he was like, yeah, let's do a post-credit scene and then we'll bring him back.
I never thought about that. That would, you know what? I think you kind of sold me on that just blindly, Bob. I think you could co-sign. You could definitely sell me on that. So I'm gonna say, I'll say, yeah. I kind of hope we call it now, and then in like a week or two, they're doing some press or something, and then it comes out that that's how the whole Peacemaker thing started. So all right, I could get down with that. I like that.
And I'm
Um,
definitely interested in a Peacemaker show after seeing what the character's like. I was worried about Peacemaker, I'll be honest. After seeing like a Homelander type character, like kind of over and over again after The Boys, I was like, I hope he's not like Homelander. I hope he's not like John Walker, where he's just like,
yeah,
but he's not. He is his own guy. I care about peace, even if that means killing everyone in the way of it. I like Peacemaker.
killing women and children. We got back to the killing women and children.
Yeah.
Another joke that I'm telling you, we just cross them off as we go. I loved the fight in the reflection of the helmet
Yeah,
between
that was really
the two
cool.
of them. And even though I didn't see the first Suicide Squad, I did have the same reaction. I was like, It's like, I thought that dude was going to make it. He just
Yeah.
seemed like a good guy. And it seemed like, even though this movie's not all about good people or good guys, it did feel like he was going to be one of the guys that, at the very least, sacrificed himself at the last minute for the team. And then, like I said, Milton dying, he dies. The conversation about his name that had me cracking up. So that, like, those are the high points for me. And then again, that 8 minutes earlier, everything that led to the Peacemaker showdown, that was some of the high points for me for the movie. At least I loved it. The aquarium scene, and then the fish are, coming and attacking him, and then you're in the water and all that kind of stuff. The javelin, still being a part of it. All fucking thumbs up for me. Loved it.
I forget who tweeted it, but they said that scene in the aquarium, it might have been someone from Barstool. They said it was just more beautiful than it had any right to be. It was really just that one, like, 30-second, I don't know, maybe minute stretch in the movie where they had that nice classical music under it. King Shark was running around with the fish, and it was just like, oh, we could take a second to breathe, and then Starro fucking escapes and everything goes wrong and all that. He kills the Thinker. He rips his own, master's body apart brutally, kills most of the military. He begins taking control of the population with the fucking armpit vagina things. And Waller tells him, all right, you've got the intel. Your mission's complete. Get the fuck out of there. Congratulations, guys. You survived. And now Bloodsport's, oh, fuck, but fucking Starro. And he becomes a leader. She told him, I'll turn you into a leader. And he turns back with his teammates and leads them in battling Starro. Waller attempts to execute them for this, which I was kind of surprised by. I guess she just wanted the intel back. She wanted it in her hands. Yep. I was like, all right, they're going back to battle it. Right before she's about to, prevented by her subordinates. They hit her with a pole. Everyone's like, holy fuck, what are we supposed to do now? And then they just get on the comms. They're like, all right, well, we're leading the Suicide Squad in. The guy that was in the room, in the communications room with the glasses, was the one that was like, holy shit, we get a kaiju. On set, he was King Shark. He was the one wearing that big rig and kind of playing like how James Gunn's brother plays Rocket Raccoon on set, and he was Weasel on set and stuff like that. I thought that was kind of cool. I hope he got paid double.
Yeah. Hopefully he got something. If not, fire his agent, right?
Yeah.
Waller, she, like, awesome performer, like, just such a mean motherfucker. That's like the worst. Like, everyone's had that substitute teacher that, like, scared the shit out of him, gave him nightmares. That's the kind of vibes I got off for her. That was another critique I had that I thought could have made the movie a little better. If I think one or two more people in that room were strong personalities in terms of being really funny, just good timing or stuff like that, I thought that room could have used a little bit more of something. I don't know what it was, but once she went down, I was like, all right, I know these guys are on her side and they have, like, good hearts, so I'm happy they're there. But I was like, I just wish there was kind of like you said, James Gunn's brother, like that kind of guy, because I always love seeing him in Guardian. So it's like just kind of going one for one with another James Gunn comic book movie. That was one thing, but man, she was a mean motherfucker. She was so mean. And
she's like that
mean.
In the first one too. She was one of the highlights of the first, where the first really was lifted up by a couple really good performances, like Viola Davis, Margot Robbie, Will Smith was really good as Deadshot in the first one. There were a couple, and even Joel Kinnaman as Rick Flag. I feel like James Gunn looked at that and was like, I'll take all of the best elements, kind of ignore that it happened, but kind of not ignore it. Like, it's the same thing. Like, I don't even know if you could call this a sequel, because they do kind of ignore the first one, but at the same time they don't. And they went from Suicide Squad to the Suicide Squad. It wasn't like they're doing a sequel like number 2. In this big battle, unfortunately, our man Polka-Dot Man is killed. He says, I'm a superhero, and boom, Starro just kills him. Sad to see that one. I would say that was the saddest death. Our guy Nathan Hurst actually wrote in and said, are you guys bummed about a certain death in the movie? I know for me, it was Polka-Dot Man and Rick Flag. Seeing him become a solid character, but then taken away from us was a huge bummer. Nathan, I'm with you. It was those two for me as well. It was Polka-Dot Man more than anyone, because I was kind of like, this is my fucking guy. I feel like I could cosplay as Polka-Dot Man at a Comic-Con and look like him.
Polka-Dot Man. Oh, that's going to be a big hit, I bet, for maybe Halloween or something like that. We're only 2 months away here. That could be a big, and if you do it right, you could probably find some shit that glows. Yeah, no, it was a bummer. But also seeing him go down, and he's a superhero, he's so proud. However, it's kind of like makes Polka-Dot Man's mom like a hero in herself, because she made that superhero, right?
It's like the Loki thing, right? It's like she existed to inspire the best version of Polka-Dot Man. And when he looked at Starro and saw the giant version of his mom, so James Gunn. It was like almost like when Ego turns into Pac-Man at the end of Guardians 2, and
Yes.
you're like, this is ridiculous. But at this point, we're in and we're going for it, and it's treated kind of seriously within the movie. You know, they're not like Polka-Dot Man, snap out of it. Like Polka-Dot Man is kind of like he's not the joke himself. They're like, yeah, he's part of our team. He fucking shoots these scorching hot polka dots at people. That's kind of what he does.
Somebody said too, we never find out how he gets the polka dots out of him. Does he jerk off to get them out? I was like, man, if James got, I mean, that would have got insured the NC-17 rating, because I know he pukes, right? We see him puking them up at one
We
point.
see him like walk away into the forest, and I was like, is he pissing out the polka dots? Like, I didn't know what he was doing. Like, I kind of like that it's left into a mystery, because you're like, how the fuck does he get those polka dots out of him?
It's just a rash, he says in the beginning. It's
Yeah.
like in Swing About Mary when Chris Elliott starts getting like little pimples here and there, and then it's the love pimples or whatever he calls them. Unbelievable. Something About Mary, by the way, a little tangent. God, just a fucking masterpiece. I know the mom passed away the other day. She was in
Oh,
like
really?
Night Court. Yeah, the
Rest in peace.
Yeah, rest in peace. But Something About Mary was one of those movies that was like, it had some really raunchy fucking scenes that like stick with you. The hair gel scene and a bunch of other things, and it just fucking delivered. I'm gonna watch some of them. Everyone, the homework tonight. Watch Something About Mary this weekend. That's what I want everyone to do. Do it for the actress who just passed away, and just for all time. Like, I feel like some of those comedies from like the late '90s get kind of forgotten because as time goes on, and then we had that kind of next golden era with like The Hangover, Old School, Wedding Crashers, and stuff like that. That fucking movie, man. Oh my god,
I
it's
gotta
all
check it
time
out
Ben
because
Stiller cringe.
I've seen it. I know I've seen it because I remember my grandmother, rest in peace, showing it to me and a couple of my cousins when we were way too young,
Oh
way,
my
way, way too
god.
young, and it being a thing. But because I was so young, I genuinely like I remember nothing about it. So I'm gonna put that down as my homework, and I'm gonna go watch it, and it'll be like a new movie for me.
Bob, when you watch it, I want you to tweet out the things that you think you were too young to see, because there's about 3 things right on the top of my head that I can think of. That, I mean, I will never watch that movie with my children. I will
I was
never be in the
honestly
same
probably
room.
7 or 8 years old when I was shown that by my grandmother. And she also, I convinced her, man, Grandma Fox was the best. I convinced her that my mom would always let me have coffee. She was making herself a coffee, and I was like 8, and I was like, yeah, my mom lets me have coffee. And in reality, she had maybe let me have one sip of her coffee at a family party once. Like, and my grandma was like, okay, I'll make you a cup. And she did. And I was bouncing off the walls. And that was like, my mom, every time she dropped me off after that, was like, remember, no coffee. No coffee for the little 8-year-old. But yeah,
Never listen to kids. That's the one thing out there. That's on Grandma Fox as much as anybody else. If they
yeah.
say your parents let you do it, do not believe a fucking word. Because Sienna tells people we let her like fucking light fireworks on. It's like, no, we don't. It would be pretty awesome because she has little hands. It would make it easier to do sometimes, but we don't do that.
Eventually, Harley pierces a hole in Starro's eye with a javelin. A crazy, like, visual, artsy look of this where she's inside the eye and we get the rats going inside the eye. And as someone that has always heard that myth about New York, where it's like you're always 1 square foot away from a rat if you're in New York, because that's how many there are, the visual of the 10,000 rats biting Starro from the inside. It was disgusting. Jumping over Idris when he's like covering up. I hated it. I mean, McMahon tweeted out, this did pretty definitively solve that whole animal debate. If you've got 10,000 rats, you're winning.
I had no idea what the tweet was about. And seeing the McMahon, McMahon's not one to, eat his words all that much. And I saw him eat his words and I'm like, wow, what caused that? And I wasn't even thinking about the Suicide Squad coming out then. And then I saw the movie. I go, oh yeah, yep. So, I mean, anyone who wants to listen to one of the all-time great podcasts, you go back to Mixtape. It was with our boy YP back in the day, obviously Tyler as well. And just I listened to that on the train ride home, trying to I was like kind of like half awake. I was so tired, and I just stayed up the whole time because I was laughing at the nonsense of it all. But I mean, I never heard that New York City. Fun fact isn't even the word for it. Unfun fact, scary fact.
I don't think it's true. I think it's like an urban myth, but like that's been like a thing that's you grow up around here, people say it.
Yeah, and just seeing them gnaw it away. I also, when Harley Quinn was like, I know what I have to do with the javelin, like 10 minutes before she did it, and I liked kind of the misdirect because I said, my brother, that's going in the fucking eye. And then it goes in the eye, but it's all water, so it doesn't really work out the way it did. I appreciated that little misdirect as well. Again, didn't appreciate watching rats gnaw the fuck out of something. It reminds me of in Game of Thrones, the tickler, when they light the rat's ass and it like chews through the chest of their like enemies. Oh my god, man. That's some fucked up shit.
And I want to note, shout out to James Gunn for casting Taika Waititi in this very, very tiny role, because it was perfect for what it was. When you see Taika Waititi at the end, you just want to like that guy. Like, we all love Taika. Yep. So it makes that moment a little more heartwarming. Even though we didn't get to see a ton of Ratcatcher and Ratcatcher 2's backstory, we saw it a little bit in the beginning. This little moment right before she unleashes them and kind of like makes her dad proud with the technology and whatever, was like, oh man, like he gave every character their own little thing, which I loved. And with the military distracted, she takes control of the government, pledges democratic elections. This is the leader of the rebel camp. They use their drive as leverage, and Bloodsport tells Waller, listen, release me and my teammates, or else we're going to put this out onto the entire world. Everyone will know the U.S. involvement. And that is the Suicide Squad. We've got mid and post-credit scenes. In the mid-credit scene, we see that Weasel actually survived. He coughs up some water on the beach. He starts running around. Very funny. And Peacemaker, also alive, as I sort of referenced before. We see the two people from that control room, the blonde girl, who I believe is James Gunn's in real life girlfriend, and the guy that was kind of funny. He was the King Shark on set. And they look over Peacemaker and they're like, I can't believe he survived. And they say, yeah, what do you need him for? They're like, oh, nothing, just to save the fucking world. And Peacemaker, HBO Max, that will come out, I don't know, later this year, early next year. Looking forward to that. I think they're done filming it already, seeing where this story goes, seeing what other obscure DC villains James Gunn is going to bring into the fold. I just like the idea of James Gunn's DCU coming into the play. And I saw a report that said he's already like signed on to do more stuff for DC. This would be my dream scenario. If he wraps up Guardians 3, the holiday special with Marvel, and he's like, all right, that's, my trilogy. I want to wrap a nice bow on that and put that in the past. Make him the Kevin Feige of the DCU. Put him at the helm of it. He knows comic books. He understands source material so well. Look at what he did with Guardians. Look at what he did with this. He can take the most obscure characters and make them work on the big screen. I feel like after this, give James Gunn the keys.
I would not be against it. That's for damn sure. Just seeing this entire, how it all happened and living through it, right? Where he was very happily the Marvel guy and absolutely crushed it on all levels. And then seeing him basically become starting his own, joining the rival family, if it was like a fucking popular thing, right? And just
WCW and WWF.
Yeah. It's truly crazy. And then if DC does kind of rise up and turn them into like, it becomes like the movie theater wars instead of the Monday Night Wars, and it makes everyone get better, that would be awesome. Not that I don't think Marvel's resting on their laurels by any means, but I'd be down for that. I want to see James Gunn. That would be best case scenario. He kind of becomes like the Feige, if he can handle it, because he may not want to do like just be so comic driven, but if he does, or give him one of the big boys, give him Superman, and let's fucking make Superman work, because the Batman's already in production. That's already had a bunch of different things. You got to get Superman back on the track. Yeah. You have to fucking do it. This was a note I made. I think now that DC, they had, I wouldn't say this was like a slam dunk, like this wasn't like a Iron Man redefining the entire universe. I think it was very good though. Very good. And I think they laid some good groundwork. They need to hit on the Batman. And the Batman's already been shot, right? Are they just in
I think they're maybe doing reshoots, but they're mostly done with the Batman. I saw a trailer for the original trailer for it before this movie, and that just made me so excited for that. With the Something in the Way, Nirvana, the Riddler stuff, that has to hit. I mean, I already own so much merch for it because I'm banking on it hitting. I'm like buying the penny stocks, hoping that when this comes out, people are going to be all about Pattinson, because I already am.
Exactly. Pattinson. I forgot about Pattinson. It's a good name. They have a good name right off the bat. So they need the Batman hit, and they need, I'm sure there's probably at least one more DC movie like in production already. They need those two to hit, or you need like to have like 3 or 4 wins here. You need to like take the series if it was a baseball, analogy. Right? Yeah. You can't be like, all right, Suicide Squad was good. Batman sucked. This, next movie, Aquaman 2 sucked. And then it's just like, I as like the casual fan that will be more than happy to put my money towards DC, you're going to lose me again. I'm going to be like, well, you guys have to prove it to me again. And then by the time you get James Gunn or someone else that I can like believe in, it's going to be like 5 years down the road. And it's like, what the fuck was the whole point of this whole thing? So I hope they do it. I'm not 100% sold just because I've seen DC, but if you tell me James Gunn has a big hand in it, I'll believe it.
All right, let's talk about one of our next sponsors before we get into our questions. And this is actually the perfect transition because we were talking about upcoming DC projects. They got to win the series, as you said, Clem. We've got a couple TV shows coming up. We've got Peacemaker. We know J.J. Abrams is involved in some kind of Green Lantern, Dark Justice League type thing for HBO Max. It seems like maybe they're going the HBO Max route. We've got Gotham, the series that's going to be, or Gotham PD, whatever, the series that's going to be connected to the Batman, and we're going to see the police side of things on that side. What better for TV shows than Magic Spoon? Have a little Magic Spoon by your side, and while you're watching this stuff, you can be eating healthy and eating some delicious stuff all at the same time. 0 grams of sugar, 13 to 14 grams of protein, only 4 net grams of carbs in each serving, and only 140 calories a serving. This stuff is good too. It doesn't taste like shitty, healthy cereal. It tastes like normal cereal. Your kids will probably like it. If you want to get your kids eating healthier, it's keto friendly, gluten free, grain free, soy free, low carb, GMO free. You can build your own box. You get a variety pack. They've got cocoa flavors, fruity, frosted, peanut butter, blueberry, cinnamon. I know people love the frosted. So frosted, cocoa, cinnamon, all that stuff is good stuff. Clem, you're a Magic Spoon guy yourself, aren't you?
Big time Magic Spoon guy. Listen to this, Bob Fox. We have in our pantry, we had, I don't know, like your typical cereals, like 6 or so cereals of all different brands and stuff like that. I go with the Magic Spoon. I'm going to be going back on the Magic Spoon because we are currently, like I said, we're renovating the house. We've been eating takeout every single night. Feel gross. Football season, which is scary to say, football season is when the diet begins. It's like an oxymoron. But once we do it, we're going with the Magic Spoon so I can at least taste my food and enjoy it as I eat it. But in that in that pantry with 6 cereals, AJ would always ask for the frosted Magic Spoon. And that's a kid with kid taste buds, and he's going for the Magic Spoon. He's not going for the sugar bombs, which thank God, because you give that kid a gram of sugar, he's running around like Bob Fox,
like me on coffee, yeah.
at grandma's house. So and he's be like, can I have more? I'm like, sure, buddy. I'm just like, put a funnel in his mouth and just dump it down. Be like, eat all the Magic Spoon you want, pal. So like you said, get our little Saturday morning cartoons, get to eat our Magic Spoon, enjoy it, and get going from there.
There you go. Did I give the promo code for Magic Spoon?
You didn't, Bob. Let's do it now.
Robbie at magicspoon.com/Robbie. Remember, spell that ROBBIE, not ROBBY, ROBBIE, and you'll save $5 off your next order. Thank you to Magic Spoon for sponsoring this episode.
People put in ROBBY, they should have to pay $5 extra for that.
I agree.
So they do the IE. Robbie with a Y is the lazy way. It's the
I wonder if Magic
out.
Spoon could do that. Charge $5 extra.
Bob Fox didn't get the barstool by being lazy and spelling his name with a Y. He grinded. He made it through the fucking rigors of working for Riggs. Riggers is basically, that was like the fucking intern training program with Riggs. From what I can understand, I never had to deal with it, obviously, but I know we lost some good men. That's basically the Suicide Squad. If Riggs was your boss for a while there, it sounded like you were dying.
I was like the Harley Quinn. Like, I made it to the end, but Rick Flag and all my comrades, they're gone now. Yeah. Our first question comes from someone else that actually made it through the Riggs camp and is still in the Riggs camp, Jake Bass. He said, with Peacemaker coming out on HBO Max, what other DC shows would you like to see outside of a Batman or Superman show? He said, I think a Green Lantern or Cyborg show could be really sick. We talked a little bit about Deadshot earlier, who Will Smith played in the first Suicide Squad. He's always been one of my favorite DC villains, one of my favorite DC characters like that. I don't know if it's too soon to go back to him. I mean, they redid, Suicide Squad. You don't have to go to Will Smith. You could cast someone else as well. I think a Deadshot show would be pretty cool. The Flash they did on The Flash and Arrow and Supergirl they did on CW, not for everybody. I kind of liked them. There can't be CW shows, but they're fun. King Shark actually made his first on-screen appearance in The Flash. He was very different. He was a fucking muscular, jacked shark who wasn't as funny.
So what did he say? Green Arrow or Green Lantern?
He said Green Lantern or Cyborg would be maybe sick.
I kind of want a Green Lantern one. I feel like that, and the way that shows are being made now, it almost is better to kind of like take your time with someone like that, and we still have to look
I
to show
agree.
how
Yeah.
well it can do. And if it fails in the movies, it's going to be like, well, we fucked this up again. Like I feel like Green Lantern is too important to the DCU to just keep fucking them up, right?
Yeah.
So that would be one for me. I'm trying to think of like a villain, like
Like the
Would
Justice League
Catwoman
Dark
work?
would be cool, even like just seeing a different type of thing like that. Seeing an
Yes.
Elseworld story, if they did like, and this is, I mean, probably they couldn't do this on HBO Max because it requires all of the big guns. But one day they should make a movie using the Injustice video game storyline where Superman is the villain against the rest of the Justice League because it is fucking awesome. It is really, really cool. So, I mean, that for the far future, if you want to do an Elseworlds thing. But there's that's one that I think people should leave in the comments. Like, what DC show would you like to see on HBO Max? There's so many great characters out there, villains, heroes, anti-heroes. Which one would you like to see? I mean, even Deathstroke, Joe Manganiello got to come in at the end of Justice League and never got to be anyone else. So, like a show with him, bring him into Peacemaker if you want, give him a cameo there. I would be in for a Deathstroke show.
I don't think it works as a show, but I just want Bane. I want Bane back. I want Bane done right. So that's definitely not a show.
What if they did
but
like, what if they did like, I know they're doing a Teen Titans, but what if they did a Bat Family show and it was like Robin, Nightwing, and Red Hood and Batgirl against, you know, the Gotham City Rogues Gallery in a world where maybe Batman is like passed on, or I don't know, set it in the fucking Nolan verse, or where he's gone. I don't know. You can't set it in the Nolan verse.
no,
Don't do that. Don't fuck with the
yeah,
Nolan verse. Actually, I don't want
do
anyone.
not yet.
Don't
Do
fuck with
not
that.
touch that. Do not touch. That's like fucking putting it for the kids. Do not touch and like
Yeah.
taping it too, so they know not to touch it. But I do think like there is a chance that they kind of have to build this thing at a reasonable pace, and I think TV might be a better way to do that. And with
I
the
agree.
world is a streaming world now. It's not
Yeah.
like I had to sit with my parents because we were getting our floors done, and it was like the polyurethane. I was getting high off the fumes in the house, so I slept at their house. And they're like, "Oh, if you want to like watch TV, here's a cable, and then here's like the Roku remote if you want to stream." I was like, I have no use for the TV right now. The Mets already lost during the day. I have no use for regular TV. This day and age, though, like it feels like I'm just watching mini movies when it's on a streaming
Yep.
network and it's on
I
demand.
mean,
So I
Loki was
think that's the way to
completely
go.
like that. Like we talked about it every week, felt like a 60-minute Marvel movie, and it was fucking awesome. And like, if you want to do that, it's probably, I don't know if it's more expensive to do it like that. It probably is. If you're shooting more content, like if you're shooting rather than 2 hours, like 10 hours of content. But I really do think it's worth it. I think it's worth it in building characters. I think people are more likely to get hooked on it. Dylan Hadabout writes in it, says, what made this one so much better than the last one? Clem, you didn't see the last one. I've kind of touched on certain things throughout it. I think the last one suffered a lot from the editing dilemma where they brought in that trailer company to recut the entire movie. It had jumbled up tone where you didn't know if they were going for the karaoke or the dark thing. It had a lot of time spent on character backstories, where this one kind of got right into it, kind of showed us backstories along the way. As the characters were learning about each other, we were learning backstories. I think this one was 10 times better than the last one, to be honest. And I wasn't someone who was so negative about the Suicide Squad. I think I actually, the first one, I think I actually defended it more than most because I liked some of the performances. Even though I didn't love Jared Leto's Joker, I kind of liked that he was brought in a way where basically in that one, Harley was on another mission where they took her from jail and sent her on a suicide mission. But Jared Leto broke out of jail as the Joker and was like, I'm going to fucking go pick Harley up and get her off this mission. And she was like, yeah, Mr. J, come pick me up. I liked that storyline. So there were elements about it that I liked. I didn't think the whole thing was horrible, but I thought the tone of this one, the understanding of the source material, willing to get wacky with it, having the weight of actual people dying, a big body count. The last one didn't have a big body count. The last one, pretty much everyone made it till the end. This
Really?
yeah, this was like the Suicide Squad. Yeah. This just felt like what it should be. Felt a lot more comic booky, felt a lot brighter. It was a lot funnier, and it felt like it knew what it wanted to be. And it was a James Gunn crazy, zany superhero movie.
So what's the difference between the first one and the second one? James Gunn.
Yeah.
That's one way to say it, right?
You brought James Gunn in and you had to make a James Gunn movie, and it really worked out. Harry Heicholtz said, will you watch Aquaman 2 if we are guaranteed that King Shark is in it? I'll watch Aquaman 2 no matter what. Have you seen Aquaman, Clem?
I have not seen Aquaman.
Aquaman
I
is an enjoyable movie. It was a surprising one because you know what? I always liked Aquaman. Like growing up, I liked Aquaman. I thought he was cool. And then you watch Robot Chicken and you watch the cartoons and you watch the memes and you're like, oh fuck, people hate Aquaman, don't they? He's kind of the butt of the joke. And then the new 52 came out when I was in high school, which is where DC kind of said, all right, we're starting over at issue 1 with all of our series. We want to revamp everything. And the Aquaman one was written by Jeff Johns, and it was so badass. They made him an awesome character with awesome villains, just really cool. So I was excited when they cast Jason Momoa as Aquaman. I was like, that's a badass actor. I really like Jason Momoa, and I thought he was really good in the Justice League. Thought he was one of the highlights of that movie. And then I never saw Aquaman when it came out. I don't know why. It just was like, it was a DC movie, so it wasn't, urgent on the list. Months later, I had a 3 night with Trent. We sat on the couch and we watched Aquaman together. It might have been the most enjoyable movie watching experience we ever had. And I don't know if it was the 3 or the Aquaman itself, but it just all hit at the same time. There's weird like Game of Thrones elements in Aquaman that I think they tried to put in there with like Arthur being like, all right, now you're the Jon Snow, like you kind of have to be the king of this kingdom, and he doesn't want to be the king of the kingdom, and he's got a half brother I think who was like very anti him. It is a enjoyable movie. You got Tamora Morrison, our guy Boba Fett's in the movie. He's great in it. I would recommend Aquaman. So yeah, I will watch Aquaman. I hope King Shark 2 is in it, or King Shark is in Aquaman 2 because that would be a great connection.
This is going to sound so lame, but it's the God's honest truth. It's not even lame, stupid. And it's the real reason I watch Aquaman because I'm the same with you. Like I love Khal Drago.
I feel like I know what you're about to say. Because you want Vinny Chase to be playing Aquaman?
It's because the fake Aquaman movie was so good that doesn't even exist. I feel like they can't possibly match it. And it's the God's honest truth. I honestly I'm like this, but this wasn't as good as the one that they took down Spider-Man. They took down Spider. They squashed the insect. They squashed the bug. And there was roving blackouts in the valley that fucking day, that weekend. And that is how broken brained I am. But it's the God's honest truth. So I'll try to watch it, but it's like a really hard hurdle to get up now.
I'll say this: it's a long movie. So I think it's like over 2 hours where you're like, oh, geez, it could have been shorter for sure. But there's a lot of just like, and it's not like, wow, this is really well made. It's almost like, it reminds me of a throwback superhero movie that you would watch, like it'd be a super summer blockbuster that almost in the Sam Raimi Spider-Man era, where you're like, this is a little silly and campy, but it works and it's fun.
We're going to get like a 7-8 out of it, right? It's like, we're not looking to like,
exactly
create, another Infinity War, but we're just going to have some fun. You're going to hit the high notes. You're going to see a couple of, villains you like along the way, which is completely like, it's crazy how much everything has evolved where everyone's looking for Easter eggs and what does this mean? And was this villain going to appear?
Yeah. Now? Someone wrote in, I forget who it was. I'm sorry that I didn't write your name down, but they were like, were you guys disappointed that you didn't get like Batman or Superman in this one? And I was like, I really didn't expect any of those guys in this one. So no.
I wouldn't have minded a couple of light DC references, and there might have been some that went over my head because I'm not a DC guy, but I liked the Kryptonite Bullet, and it's like maybe one more thing, like she fucked Batman or something like that. What was the name of the that chick that chick creature looked like a He-Man, the one that jumped on the helicopter.
In the beginning, yeah, with the orange. I forget what her name was. Yeah. It's
like, oh yeah, her and Bruce Wayne. Like, be like, really? Huh?
Like yeah, she seduced him, Poison Ivy's help, or like Poison Ivy, like referencing something like that. Yeah, I would have liked that.
Exactly.
Before we get into our final question, which is a big one, I think, I want to tell everyone about the biggest pay-per-view of the month. That's Jake Paul versus Tyron Woodley. And I know you guys are saying, what, Robbie? You don't like these Jake Paul fights and stuff, right? Listen, what's special about it this time is we've got Dave and Big Cat on the broadcast. My rough and rowdy broadcasting partners. It's kind of cool that I get to say that. Fucking Dave and Big Cat are my partners. Yeah, it's mostly them doing the heavy lifting. I'll jump in with a line here and there, but they're actually going to be on the broadcast this time. The Barstool Sportsbook, I think, is the main sponsor of it. It's going to say that on the ring. I'm actually getting into it as well because Tyron Woodley is from the UFC world, and I'm a little more confident in his chances against Jake Paul, the problem child, than I was with Ben Askren's. Showtime Showtime pay-per-view and the Most Valuable Promotions presents Jake Paul versus Tyron Woodley, a 5-fight pay-per-view event in Jake Paul's hometown, Cleveland, Ohio. This will take place on Sunday, August 29th, and it'll be distributed by Showtime's pay-per-view beginning live at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. The main event, as I mentioned, is the problem child, Jake Paul, versus former UFC champion Tyron, the Chosen One, Woodley. Woodley is, yes, a wrestler like Jake Paul and like Ben Askren and a former teammate of Ben Askren's, but he's got much better hands than Ben Askren ever had. I mean, go back, look at his knockout of Robbie Lawler. If he can connect with a shot like that with Jake Paul, I would just love to see how Jake Paul takes a punch. So I'm interested in that. I think this is definitely the toughest challenge of Jake's career, and we'll see. The main event is available on all major cable, satellite, and telco pay-per-view providers for $59.99. And you can also get it on the Showtime app or showtime.com/PPV. So there you go. Dave and Big Cat on the broadcast. That's going to be awesome. I mean, people are going to tune in just to see that.
I feel like we're due for one of those crazy, weird Barstool moments that we could have never in a million years predicted. It's whenever like we start sniffing in the mainstream, like Big Cat doing the hot dog eating contest again, doused in blood by PETA or whatever. Yeah, something weird's gonna happen during that.
Maybe like
it's be
Tyron
hilarious.
Woodley gets a huge knockout and Jake Paul's finally out cold. He gets memed.
Yeah, exactly. Or like a Portnoy call. Like there's gonna be something that's gonna live on the internet forever. So check it out. I'm interested to see. Also, Bob Fox talking trash about someone's hands. Whoa, I feel like that's a no. You do that in the fucking fight game, you might be the next one in that ring.
No. I just stay on the other side of the guardrail. Our final question is from Patrick Weenham. I hope I said that right. He says, where does this movie rank among the DCEU for you guys? As far as quality, it's probably number one in front of Wonder Woman for me, but I enjoyed the Snyder trilogy more. So I've actually written down my full rankings of the DCEU, all 11 movies. I think these are going to be controversial. I think I dislike some movies that people like a lot. I think I like some movies that people don't really like. Clem, I know you haven't seen all of them, so how many have you seen DC movies?
I couldn't even tell you.
I'll go through my list, and if you've seen them, yeah, you can chime in. I'll start at number one, which is the Suicide Squad for me. This is my number one. Everything I said about it earlier just makes it the most up my alley movie. It felt like this movie was made for me in a lot of ways. So this was my favorite DCEU movie. I hope they go in this direction in the future. Number two is Wonder Woman for me. I think Wonder Woman is a really, really well-made movie with, I would say, the best scene in all of the DCEU. That no man's land scene gives me chills and makes the hair on my arms stand up every time I watch it. Every time I catch that on TNT, I'll throw it on. And that's also kind of how my rankings are listed. Like, I'm not ranking these in quality like Jeff D'Lo does, where it's like this one's a 99, this one's a 95. These are more like the most likely the movies I'm most likely to go back and watch, like in this order.
Yes.
You have seen Wonder Woman, right?
And those are probably my top two. We'll see what other ones I've seen, but yeah, those have both been seen.
Number three would be the first ever DCEU movie for me, Man of Steel. I know a lot of people have issues with this, and I don't love Superman cracking Zod's neck at the end either. I don't love him getting so dark with it, but there's a lot that I do love about this movie. There's the first invasion of Zod. The actual fight is a bit much where they destroy Metropolis and shit, but there was a lot of good about Man of Steel. I like Henry Cavill as Superman. I like Amy Adams as Lois Lane. So that's my number three. Number four, I just mentioned Aquaman for all the reasons. Just told Clem to go watch it. It's just a fun movie. Like, take some 3G and watch Aquaman. It'll be a good time. Number five is Batman versus Superman. I know it's going to be super controversial for me to put that movie ahead of some of the ones I have below it, but I don't hate it as much as a lot of people do. I hate a lot about it. I hate Batman using guns and killing people, and I hate how dark they went. The Martha stuff is so like eye roll worthy, but it's got the best Batman fight scene maybe we've ever seen with Batfleck. There's some cool Bruce Wayne stuff. The fight between Batman and Superman I like. So if I catch that one on TV, usually I'll throw it on and see if I could catch the fight between Batman and Superman. Number six, I would go Justice League, and not the Zack Snyder Justice League. I know that's controversial to put Joss Whedon's above Snyder's. I just don't want to watch a 4-hour movie ever. Literally ever. I don't want to watch a 4-hour movie. So the original Justice League goes ahead of it. Next, I would go with the original Suicide Squad, which is going to be so controversial, me putting it above some of these, but I don't know. Suicide Squad was a movie that until like I read about it more, I was like, all right, it was bad, but it wasn't horrible. And then you dig into it, you're like, I guess it was horrible. After that, I would go Birds of Prey, which is not a horrible movie by any means, a movie that actually got pretty good reviews. It bombed at the box office, but this was just simply the most forgettable superhero movie I have ever seen in my entire life. It had our guy Ewan McGregor as Black Mask, a villain I like a lot. It had Huntress in it, a villain anti-hero I like a lot. Had Harley Quinn. She has a great scene in the beginning where she describes a bacon, egg, and cheese, and I was like, I relate to that hard. But other than that, I don't remember anything about the movie, and I watched it less than a year ago. And I'm not smoking that much 3G. It was just that forgettable. After that, I would go Wonder Woman 1984. Not a great movie, put out on HBO Max this year. Pedro Pascal kind of saved it for me with his amazing over the top 80s campy performance. And then I would go Zack Snyder's Justice League. And in dead last, one of the best reviewed movies of the DCEU, Shazam. I don't know what it was about this movie. It didn't click for me. I said to Jeff D. Lowe, who I saw it with on opening night, if I wasn't with Jeff, I would have walked out of the theater and not finished the movie. I actually left before the post-credit scene. I said, don't give a fuck. It just didn't hit for me. Zachary Levi and the kid, it just the chemistry was so weird. I didn't like the way it was shot. I hated the villain. I didn't like the CGI. I thought it was so corny and campy. It just came off like a movie that would have came out in 2002 that like in theaters at the same time as like I don't know, the corny Norbit or something. Like I did not like Shazam. I in fact hated it, and I hate very few movies. So that is my full rankings. I would go The Suicide Squad, Wonder Woman, Man of Steel, Aquaman, Batman v Superman, Justice League, Suicide Squad, Birds of Prey, Wonder Woman 1984, Zack Snyder's Justice League, and Shazam.
I've never seen Shazam. I will say the posters, they're not doing it for me. Bob Fox is I think you're looking to get into a fight now, Bob. You challenged someone's hands, and now you're pissing off an entire comic book legion. But the thing is, I think DC fans have been so beaten down over the years. I don't think anyone's going to really.
Well, the Snyder fans are crazy. You can't criticize anything that they say. But anything else, they don't really give a fuck about. I mean, they were demanding that James Gunn apologize for this movie that Zack Snyder's technically an executive producer on, just because he didn't acknowledge the Snyderverse enough and he didn't restore it into canon. Like, I'm sorry, crazy people.
They've gotten a little too strong. They got their wish revealed. I have people DMing me out of the blue. And there's some other cut of some other movie.
The Ayer cut of the Suicide Squad.
Is that okay? So there it is. Because I'm like, I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. So it was someone like a bunch of people. They must have seen that I tweeted released a Snyder Cut before I even knew what the Snyder Cut was. It's like, all right, this guy gets us. So then they're telling me to do that, and this is probably I guess.
I'll put it in, but yeah, someone at Comic-Con just released the Snyder Cut picket sign in Clem's hand and took a picture of him, and he was like, I don't know if this is a good thing or a bad thing. He didn't know what the Snyder Cut was. Very funny picture for me to look at, knowing that context. I always laugh looking at that. Just you're like, I don't know, Snyder Cut, release it. So make sure you listen to the video, by the way, subscribe, and put in the comments what you think the next DC HBO Max show should be. Shout out Jake Bass coming up with the great questions for us.
I got a question for you, Bob, before we sign off.
Yeah.
Favorite member of the Suicide Squad in this movie? Who is your number one guy?
King Shark. It would be King Shark. I thought it would be King Shark going in, and it really was. Number 2 would be Polka-Dot Man.
Mine's Polka-Dot Man, and number 2 for me was Ratcatcher 2. I liked her. Maybe just so delightful. Just she's done more for the good PR for rats than anyone
ever, maybe. Right? Maybe since Charles Entertainment Cheese.
Yeah. Oh, Charles Entertainment Cheese. I was going to say Ratatouille.
Yeah. Ratatouille is a good one. And they make that joke and they're like, oh, come on, Ratatouille.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, shout out. I mean, we lost a good one in Polka-Dot Man, but I think if you go into future Suicide Squads knowing you're going to find some people you love and knowing you might lose them, it might kind of get you more emotionally charged and see how everything plays out.
It makes you like them more. You're like, I only had them for 45 minutes or whatever. I only had them for a little bit of time and then they're gone. You don't risk overexposure at all doing that.
Don't it always seem to go that you don't know what you got till it's gone? So you gotta pay paradise and put up a parking lot. Pay paradise and kill Polka-Dot, man.
We will be back this Friday for the first ever Marvel What If recap. And listen, we fucked up because we got sent screeners of the first 3 episodes and they expired before we watched any of them. So we're going to be watching them along with you guys because we are, we did that on purpose because we wanted to be the common man.
Barstool difference, baby. Keep giving us money, put us out with all these fucking major leagues and sport networks. Doesn't matter. We're still professional idiots trying to figure. I forgot all about that. God damn it.
We will see you guys on Friday.